Mencius states that man's nature is good, but I say that this view is wrong. All men in the world, past and present, agree in defining goodness as that which is upright, reasonable, and orderly, and evil as that which is prejudiced, irresponsible, and chaotic. This is the distinction between good and evil. Now suppose that man's nature was in fact intrinsically upright, reasonable, and orderly. Then what need would there be for sage kings and ritual principles? The existence of sage kings and ritual principles could certainly add nothing to the situation. But because man's nature is in fact evil, this is not so. Therefore, in ancient times, the sages, realizing that man's nature is evil, that it is prejudiced and not upright, irresponsible and lacking in order, for this reason established the authority of the ruler to control it, elucidated ritual principles to transform it, set up laws and standards to correct it, and meted out strict punishments to restrain it. As a result, all the world achieved order and conformed to goodness. Such is the orderly government of the sage kings and the transforming power of ritual principles. Now let someone try doing away with the authority of the ruler, ignoring the transforming power of ritual principles, rejecting the order that comes from laws and standards, and dispensing with the restrictive power of punishments. Then watch and see how the people of the world treat each other. He will find that the powerful impose on the weak and rob them. The many terrorize the few and extort from them, and in no time the whole world will be given up to chaos and mutual destruction. It is obvious from this, then, that man's nature is evil, and that his goodness is the result of conscious activity. Those who are good at discussing antiquity must demonstrate the validity of what they say in terms of modern times. Those who are good at discussing heaven must show proofs from the modern world. In discussion of all kinds, men value what is in accord with the facts, and what can be proved to be valid. Hence, if a man sits on his mat propounding some theory, he should be able to stand right up and put it into practice, and show that it can be extended over a wide area with equal validity. Now, Mencius states that man's nature is good, but this is neither in accord with the facts, nor can it be proved to be valid. One may sit down and propound such a theory, but he cannot stand up and put it into practice, nor can he extend it over a wide area with any success at all. How, then, could it be anything but erroneous? If the nature of man were good, we could dispense with sage kings and forget about ritual principles. But if it is evil, then we must go along with the sage kings and honour ritual principles. The straightening board is made because of the warped wood. The plumb line is employed because things are crooked. Rulers are set up and ritual principles elucidated because the nature of man is evil. From this, it is obvious then that man's nature is evil, and that his goodness is the result of conscious activity. A straight piece of wood does not have to wait for the straightening board to become straight. It is straight by nature. But a warped piece of wood must wait until it has been laid against the straightening board, steamed and forced into shape before it can become straight, because by nature it is warped. Similarly, man's nature is evil. He must wait for the ordering power of the sage kings and the transforming power of ritual principles. Only then can he achieve order and conform to goodness. From this, it is obvious then that man's nature is evil, and that his goodness is the result of conscious activity. Someone may ask whether ritual principles and concerted conscious activity are not themselves a part of man's nature, so that for that reason the sage is capable of producing them. But I would answer that this is not so. A potter may mould clay and produce an earthen pot, but surely moulding pots out of clay is not a part of the potter's nature. A carpenter may carve wood and produce a utensil, but surely carving utensils out of wood is not a part of the carpenter's human nature. The sage stands in the same relation to ritual principles as the potter to the things he moulds and produces. How then could ritual principles and concerted conscious activity be a part of man's basic human nature? As far as human nature goes, the sages Yao and Shun possessed the same nature as the tyrant Jie or the robber Zhi, and the gentleman possesses the same nature as the petty man. Would you still maintain then that ritual principles and concerted conscious activity are a part of man's nature? If you do so, then what reason is there to pay any particular honour to Yao, Shun, or the gentleman? The reason people honour Yao, Shun, and the gentleman is that they are able to transform their nature, apply themselves to conscious activity, and produce ritual principles. The sage then must stand in the same relation to ritual principles as the potter to the things he moulds and produces. Looking at it this way, how could ritual principles and conscious activity be a part of man's nature? The reason people despise Jie or robber Zhi or the petty man is that they give free rein to their nature, follow their emotions, and are content to indulge their passions. So their conduct is marked by greed and contentiousness. Therefore, it is clear that man's nature is evil, and that his goodness is the result of conscious activity. Heaven did not bestow any particular favour upon Xunzi, Mengzi or Xiaoyi that it withheld from other men. And yet, these three men among all others proved most capable of carrying out their duties as sons, and winning fame for their filial piety. Why? Because of their thorough attention to ritual principles. Heaven has not bestowed any particular favour upon the inhabitants of Qi and Lu, which it has withheld from the people of Qin. And yet when it comes to observing the duties of the father and son, and the separation of roles between husband and wife, the inhabitants of Qin cannot match the filial reverence and respect for proper form which marks the people of Qi and Lu. Why? Because the people of Qin give free rein to their emotional nature, are content to indulge their passions, and are careless of ritual principles. It is certainly not due to any difference in human nature between the two groups. The man in the street can become a Yu. What does this mean? What made the sage Emperor Yu a Yu? I would reply, was the fact that he practiced benevolence and righteousness, and abided by the proper rules and standards. If this is so, then benevolence, righteousness, and proper standards must be based upon principles which can be known and practiced. Any man in the street has the essential faculties needed to understand benevolence, righteousness, and proper standards, and the potential to put them into practice. Therefore it is clear that he can become a Yu. Would you maintain that benevolence, righteousness, and proper standards are not based upon any principles that can be known and practiced? If so, then even a Yu could not have understood or practiced them. Or would you maintain that the man in the street does not have the essential faculties needed to understand them, or the potential ability to put them into practice? If so, then you are saying that the man on the street in his family life cannot understand the duties required of a father or a son, and in public life cannot comprehend the correct relationship between ruler and subject. But in fact, this is not true. Any man in the street can understand the duties required of a father or a son, and can comprehend the correct relationship between ruler and subject. Therefore, it is obvious that the essential faculties needed to understand such ethical principles and the potential ability to put them into practice must be part of his make-up. Now, if he takes these faculties and abilities and applies them to the principles of benevolence and righteousness, which we have already shown to be knowable and practicable, then it is obvious that he can become a Yu. If the man in the street applies himself to training and study, concentrates his mind and will, and considers and examines things carefully, continuing his efforts over a long period of time, and accumulating good acts without stop, then he can achieve a godlike understanding, and form a triad with heaven and earth. The sage is a man who has arrived where he has through the accumulation of good acts. You have said, someone may object, that the sage has arrived where he has through the accumulation of good acts. Why is it then that everyone is not able to accumulate good acts in the same way? I would reply, everyone is capable of doing so, but not everyone can be made to do so. The petty man is capable of becoming a gentleman, yet he is not willing to do so. The gentleman is capable of becoming a petty man, but he is not willing to do so. The petty man and the gentleman are perfectly capable of changing places. The fact that they do not actually actually do so is what I mean when I say they are capable of doing so, but they cannot be made to do so. Hence, it is correct to say that the man in the street is capable of becoming a ewe, but it is not necessarily correct to say that he will in fact find it possible to do so. But that he does not find it possible to do so does not prove that he is incapable of doing so. A person with 2 feet is theoretically capable of walking to every corner of the earth, although in fact no one has ever found it possible to do so. Similarly, the artisan, the carpenter, the farmer, the merchant are theoretically capable of exchanging professions, although in actual practice they find it impossible to do so. From this, we can see that although someone may be theoretically capable of becoming something, he may not in practice find it possible to do so. But although he does not find it possible to do so, this does not prove that he is not capable of doing so. To find it practically possible or impossible to do something, and to be capable or incapable of doing something, are 2 entirely different things. It is perfectly clear, then, that a man is theoretically capable of becoming something else. Yao asked Shun, "What are man's emotions like?" Shun replied, "Man's emotions are very unlovely things indeed." What need is there to ask any further? Once a man acquires a wife and children, he no longer treats his parents as a filial son should. Once he succeeds in satisfying his cravings and desires, he neglects his duty to his friends. Once he has won a high position and a good stipend, he ceases to serve his sovereign with a loyal heart. Man's emotions. Man's emotions. They are very unlovely things indeed. What need is there to ask any further? Only the worthy man is different from this. There is the understanding of the sage, the understanding of the gentleman, the man of breeding, and the understanding of the petty man, and the understanding of the menial. He speaks many words, but they are graceful and well ordered. All day he discourses on his reasons, employing 1,000 different and varied modes of expression. And yet, all that he says is united around a single principle. Such is the understanding of the sage. He speaks little, but what he says is brief and to the point, logical and clearly presented, as though laid out with a plumb line. Such is the understanding of the gentleman and man of breeding. His words are all flattery, his actions irresponsible. Whatever he does is shot through with error. Such is the understanding of the petty man. His words are rapid and shrill, but never to the point. His talents are varied and many, but of no practical use. He is full of subtle distinctions and elegant turns of phrase that serve no practical purpose. He ignores right or wrong, disdains to discuss crooked or straight, but seeks only to overpower the arguments of his opponent. Such is the understanding of the menial. There is superior valour, there is the middle type of valour, and there is the inferior valour. When proper standards prevail in the world, to dare to bring your own conduct into accord with them when the way of the former kings prevail, to dare to follow its dictates, to refuse to bow before the ruler of a disordered age, to refuse to follow the customs of the people of a disordered age, to accept poverty and hardship, if they are in the cause of benevolent action, to reject wealth and eminence, if they are not consonant with benevolent action. If the world recognizes you, to share in the world's joys. If the world does not recognize you, to stand alone without fear. This is superior valor. To be reverent in bearing and modest in intention, to value honor and make light of material goods, to dare to promote and honor the worthy, and reject and cast off the unworthy. Such is the middle type of valor. To ignore your own safety in the quest for wealth, to make light of danger, and try to talk your way out of every difficulty, to rely on lucky escapes, and to ignore right and wrong, just and unjust, and seek only to overpower the arguments of your opponents. Such is inferior valor. Fan Ruo and Ju Shu were famous bows of ancient times, but if they had not first been subjected to pressers and straighteners, they would never have become true of themselves. Cong of Juquan of Qi, Xue of Taigong of Qi, Liu of King Wen of the Zhou, Hu of Lord Zhuang of Chu, and Ganjing, Mo Ye, Ju Que, and Bi Lu of King He Lu of Wu were all famous swords of antiquity, but if they had not been sharpened to the grindstone, they would never have become sharp. And if men of strength had not wielded them, they would never have been able to cut anything. Hua Liu, Qi Ji, Xuan Ni, and Luo were famous horses of an antiquity, but if they had not been subject to the restraint of bit and bridle, and the threat of whip, and driven by a master driver like Zhao Fu, they would never have succeeded in travelling 1,000 li in one day. In the same way, a man, no matter how fine his nature or how keen his mindset, must seek a worthy teacher to study under and good companions to associate with. If he studies under a worthy teacher, he will be able to hear about the ways of Yao, Shun, Yu, and Tang. And if he associates with good companions, he will be able to observe conduct that is loyal and respectful. Then, although he is not aware of it, he will day by day progress in the practice of benevolence and righteousness, for the environment he is subjected to will cause him to progress. But if a man associates with men who are not good, then he will hear only deceit and lies, and will see only conduct that is marked by wantonness, evil, and greed. Then, although he is not aware of it, he himself will be in danger of severe punishment, for the environment he is subjected to will cause him to be in danger. An old text says, "If you do not know a man, look at his friends. If you do not know a ruler, look at his attendants." Environment is the important thing. Environment is the important thing.